What if I told you that a 5-cent coin from 1963 could be hiding a detail that most people would never notice? At first glance, it looks like an ordinary old nickel, but some examples can become surprisingly interesting to collectors. So before you toss one aside because it only says 5 cents, take a closer look. The story behind this little coin may be far more valuable than its face value. The 1963 US 5-cent coin is a Jefferson nickel, and millions were produced that year. It carries the familiar portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, with his name and the date positioned around the design. On the reverse, you'll find Monticello, Jefferson's famous Virginia home, along with the words 5 cents and United States of America. But here's where things get interesting. If you have a 1963 nickel in your collection, don't judge it only by its age. Being more than 60 years old doesn't automatically make it rare or expensive. What collectors really want to know is how the coin was made, how well it survived, and whether it contains anything unusual. Look closely at the date first. Check the numbers for signs of doubling, unusual shapes, or anything that appears out of alignment. Then examine the lettering. Genuine mint errors can sometimes create features that look dramatically different from a normal coin. But there's an important warning here. Damage that happened after the coin left the mint is not the same thing as a true mint error. Now turn the coin over. Take a careful look at Monticello. The building's details can tell you a lot about the coin's condition. On a heavily circulated nickel, the steps and fine architectural lines may be worn smooth. On a better preserved example, those details can remain much sharper. And this is where collectors start paying serious attention. Condition can make an enormous difference. A 1963 nickel that spent decades moving through cash registers, pockets, and drawers may show scratches, flattened lettering, and worn surfaces. But a coin that was protected soon after leaving the mint can retain much more of its original detail. Here's something many people overlook. Two coins with exactly the same year and mint mark can have dramatically different collector appeal simply because of condition. If your nickel looks unusually sharp, don't immediately clean it. Cleaning an old coin can actually reduce its collector value because it may leave scratches or an unnatural surface. Instead, handle it by the edges and inspect it under good lighting. Now look for the mint mark. The mint mark can help identify where the coin was produced, and that small letter can make the coin more interesting to collectors. But don't assume that every mint mark automatically means rarity. The real question is how that particular issue compares with other 1963 nickels and what condition it is in. A normal, circulated 1963 Jefferson nickel is generally not a major rarity. But certified examples in significantly better condition can attract more attention, especially when the surfaces, strike, luster, and details are strong. And then there is the possibility that makes coin hunters look twice, a genuine mint error. Maybe there's an unusual strike. Maybe lettering appears doubled. Maybe part of the design looks dramatically misplaced. Maybe the coin has an abnormal shape that cannot be explained by ordinary wear. This is where collectors pay attention, but identification matters. A strange-looking coin isn't automatically an error coin. Before assuming you've found something valuable, compare it with known examples and look for characteristics that could have occurred during the minting process. Professional authentication and grading can become especially important when a suspected error appears significant. And if you're wondering about value, don't expect every 1963 nickel to be worth a fortune. A typical example can remain close to its ordinary collector value, while premium prices are reserved for coins with exceptional condition, verified mint errors, or other characteristics that collectors can confirm. So if you find a 1963 5-cent coin, don't just look at the date and put it away. Inspect the portrait. Study the lettering. Examine the date. Check the mint mark. Turn it over and inspect Monticello. Look at the steps, the surfaces, and the smallest details. Because sometimes the difference between an ordinary old nickel and a fascinating collectible isn't obvious from across the room. It's hiding in the details. And if your 1963 Jefferson nickel has something genuinely unusual about it, that tiny 5-cent coin could deserve a much closer look than you ever expected.